Welcome to the Crypto Teacher, and guys, I'm back with the second video. As you know, I make you think. It is the weekend. Now guys, we're going to get into the educational board, the system that we have now, and then also the banking system. Now, of course, the General Educational Board, I think, started in 1903, basically being mainly funded by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates. And basically, we're going to show you a video on that, and then also getting into the banking system, how banks do all types of fraud, run drugs, and nothing happens but what? A fine, which they're printing the money, so it really doesn't matter. And the president works for the banks. That's the reason why he's called a president. Basically, nothing. United States is nothing but a corporation. But guys, enjoy the video. You have a wonderful day.
Sharon Rockefeller has been a strong advocate for the arts and public broadcasting. The First Lady of West Virginia, Sharon, fought on behalf of the state's school children and served on the board of the West Virginia Educational Broadcasting Authority. She is currently chairman of the Board of Trustees for the National Gallery of Art and has helped the institution acquire breathtaking works of beauty, some of the best anywhere in the world. Sharon has also served as president of the Washington Educational Telecommunications Association for 30 years. She helped establish WETA as one of the preeminent public broadcasting networks in the nation, producing PBS NewsHour and Washington Week, among other programs. And now maybe I'll start getting some good publicity on those particular shows. Sharon, could you please start working on that, Sharon? They tend to be on the other side of things a little bit. I think now I have a better chance. Sharon, as you receive the National Medal of Arts, we thank you for enriching the lives of millions. And I want to thank you very much for being here, Sharon. Great job you've done. Thank you. Incredible job.
Sharon Percy Rockefeller, for being a renowned champion of the arts, a generous supporter of charity, and a pioneer of new ideas and approaches in the field of public policy.
The model of going to school to learn is relatively new. Before 1900, most children learned at home and out in the real world. In 1837, the state of Massachusetts formed the first state board of education, with Horace Mann as its secretary. Mann believed that everyone was entitled to the same content in education. Returning from a research trip to Germany in 1848, Mann lobbied heavily to have the Prussian model adopted. He quickly set about establishing a statewide system of common schools, staffed by professionally trained teachers. His ideas quickly gained momentum, and by 1852, Massachusetts passed a compulsory attendance law. Mann also believed that school could become a great equalizer, and values such as obedience to authority, promptness in attendance, and organizing time according to bell ringing would help students prepare for future employment in an industrial age.
And the whole purpose of it is to create a docile factory military workforce. The whole purpose is to subordinate children and get them in that mindset of being subordinated so they grow up to be subordinated adults.
This is the poorest class I've had.
Prussian schooling had been out to destroy the imagination. In every public library worth its salt in the United States, and in every college library, you will find a collection of essays by a Prussian philosopher, Johann Fichte. FICTA said we have to set up a system of universal forced schooling in which we destroy the imagination. Bells, ordered lessons, constant testing, rankings.
The entire system is designed to regiment a large group of people and to get them all to do the exact same thing.
By 1900, 34 states had compulsory schooling laws. Half the nation's children attended one-room schools. And by 1918, every state required students to complete elementary school.
The reality is they want children to take their place in society, be cogs, and keep this system going. So you're going to school to take your place.
Now the trouble's with your attitude. You don't pay enough attention in class. You don't do enough work outside of it.
It is a case that has everything except an arrest. And that struck some as odd because in an 80-page document of court papers, the bank admits to almost going out of its way to act as a financial clearinghouse for international pariahs and drug dealers.
HSBC officials listed Mexico in its lowest risk category for money laundering during a 4-year period when Mexican drug cartels were funneling over $700 billion through the bank. U.S. Attorney Loretta Lynch.
The investigation revealed that staggering amounts of cash, hundreds of thousands of U.S. dollars daily, were being deposited into HSBC Mexico using boxes specially made to fit through their tellers' windows to speed the transactions.
And it wasn't just the drug cartels that benefited from what prosecutors called the bank's willful failure to report suspicious activity. HSBC instructed an Iranian bank how to conceal $183 million in transactions. HSBC also admitted to cutting the number of internal watchdogs to save money. Assistant Attorney General Lanny Brewer.
HSBC is paying a heavy price for its conduct. And under the terms of today's agreement, if the bank fails to comply with this agreement in any way at all, we, of course, in the government reserve the right to prosecute the bank.
Under the terms of today's settlement, nobody at HSBC will face criminal charges. Notre Dame professor Jimmy Guruli investigated money laundering cases for the Treasury Department.
We're not talking about mere negligence. We're talking about a criminal scheme that was adopted as a policy of HSBC to look the other way with regard to suspicious transactions involving money laundering.
Some would say that the message is, if you break all the laws you can until you get caught, you may have to pay a lot of money, but you're not going to go to jail.
That's a very short-sighted view, I think, because in this case, they're obviously paying a great deal of money, but they also have had to literally turn their company inside out. And the message should be that that's what you have to do.
So turn their company inside out. In a statement from its London headquarters, HSBC said it has cleaned house, firing top executives, taking back their bonuses. Now the bank has to demonstrate to a federal monitor that they're in compliance with all laws for 5 years. Scott?
Well, John, with all of this apparent evidence, why didn't the Department of Justice press a criminal prosecution on the money laundering charges?
Well, that's a question we kept asking today, and the closest we got to it was they said that they never found one bank official or any collection of bank officials acting together that were doing this on purpose. They painted a picture of a disorganized bank not communicating with itself that was collecting all of these fees and either not knowing or not wanting to know where it was all coming from.
John, thank you very much.
It sounds like the sequel to the 80s drug thriller Scarface, but instead of Miami, this one is about a war raging along the U.S. border with Mexico, and it's very real. More than 23,000 dead, more than 100 tons of cocaine seized, and more than $1/3 of $1 trillion that an American bank moved from Mexican currency exchange companies used by drug cartels. It's all in the latest issue of Bloomberg Markets magazine. The bank is Wachovia, now a unit of Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has admitted in court that Wachovia failed to report suspected money laundering by narcotics traffickers. That includes the cash used to buy 4 planes that shipped 22 tons of cocaine. According to prosecutors, here's how one deal worked. Drug smugglers in Mexico City wired $300,000 from a currency exchange to a Wachovia branch in Miami. Then they wired money from that branch to a Bank of America branch in Oklahoma City. The money was used to buy a DC-9, which then flew from St. Petersburg, Florida, to Caracas. The plane then transported 5.7 tons of cocaine, valued at about $100 million, to Mexico. There, the crew was arrested. Wachovia has admitted it didn't do enough to spot illicit funds while handling $378 billion from Mexican currency exchange firms over a 3-year period. Wells Fargo, Wachovia's new owner, has paid $160 million in fines and penalties. If Wells Fargo keeps its pledge to improve its anti-money laundering procedures, prosecutors have promised to drop all charges by next March.
Today, the European Commission has fined 5 banks just over 1 billion euros fine for taking part in 2 cartels relating to foreign exchange trading of 11 major currencies. The 5 banks are Barclays, the Royal Bank of Scotland, Citigroup, JP Morgan, and MUFG Bank, formerly known as Tokyo Mitsubishi. UBS also participated in these cartels, but was not fined, as it revealed the existence of the cartels to the Commission. These decisions show once again that the Commission will not tolerate collusive behavior in any sector of the financial markets. More information on this important decision in our press release and with the team.
Just looking through your press release, you say on page 3 that the Commission will continue pursuing other ongoing procedures concerning past conduct in the Forex spot trading market. I was just wondering if you could give us a bit more detail on what your ongoing procedures are. You haven't mentioned here, but Credit Suisse has mentioned itself that it's received charges from you in this case. HSBC has also said it's under scrutiny for Forex options. So can you give us a bit more detail on what you're looking at and what you expect to happen with Credit Suisse? Thank you.
Well, I think what we can say today and what you'll have seen is that Credit Suisse did not participate in any of the 2 infringements on which we took a decision today. The case concerning Credit Suisse is following an ordinary procedure, and this relates to an alleged infringement which may have taken place in another chat room. And regarding that case, I'm not in a position to confirm any other point or further details, since it's, of course, an ongoing procedure.
Catherine/2.
Ricardo, I'm just wondering, I haven't had the time to read through the press release yet, but has this information come to light as a result of a whistleblower or as a result of, and has there been any reductions on a fine as there is in those situations where you are informed by one of the participants in the cartel? Thank you.
Indeed, there are. Do you want me to?
I want to say that I very much regret that you don't pay attention to my initial announcements, because I specifically mentioned this point. I will leave with this. You want to take it from Ricardo? Go ahead, Ricardo.
I was just going to say that there was a leniency applications, and there's also a table which explains the different reductions granted to the fine based on different procedures of the Commission. We have the team here, so if you want afterwards, we can also run that through with you.
Yeah. Okay, we have the experts here. Yes.
Sorry, just to come back again. This is in the last 5, 6, 7 years, maybe at least the 3rd, maybe the 4th or 5th time that you fined banks. Did any of these fines get increased because the banks are repeat offenders? And secondly, are you done with the banks now? I mean, you've spent 10 years after the financial crisis fining and fining and fining these guys. Apart from the Credit Suisse thing that you've mentioned, are you done?
Well, we never speculate on cases that we may pursue in the future, so I think for the second question I wouldn't be able to answer. On the first question, we can speak with the expert in terms of the exact terms, in terms of the exact details of what has gone into the fines calculation.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Let's leave it there. Let's move on. Is there anything else we can help you with today? I don't see anything else, so tomorrow.
The 1MDB scandal is one of the greatest financial frauds in history. $4.5 billion was allegedly misappropriated from the Malaysian State Investment Fund and used to buy luxury real estate, expensive works of art, and even to produce a Hollywood movie about, of all things, financial fraud. But how did they do it? According to the US Department of Justice, one strategy involved setting up bank accounts under fake company names that resembled real firms. BlackRock Commodities Global Limited sounds a lot like the Global Investment Manager, while Affinity Equity International Partners Limited could easily be mistaken for the private equity firm. There's no law against this, but it could help put investigators off the scent. Another scheme saw money transferred to trust accounts at US law firms. Client confidentiality rules in the US mean these accounts are barely regulated, making suspicious transactions difficult to find. The DOJ alleges that firms like Shearman and Sterling and DLA Piper were unwittingly used to sneak $1 billion from 1MDB into the US. The third strategy allegedly employed is what the DOJ calls layering, moving funds from bank account to bank account, adding layers of complexity until the original source of the funds is camouflaged. Let's follow the money allegedly used to buy this pink diamond necklace for Rosmah Mansor, the wife of former Malaysian Prime Minister and founder of 1MDB, Najib Razak. It all starts with a $3 billion bond arranged by Goldman Sachs in 2013. That was issued by a wholly owned subsidiary of 1MDB, incorporated in the British Virgin Islands, and the proceeds were earmarked for a joint venture with a firm in Abu Dhabi. But instead of heading to the Middle East, most of the money was transferred into an account at Swiss private bank BSI in Lugano. From there, the DOJ claims it was shifted to investment funds in offshore centers. The money was wired via correspondent bank accounts at JP Morgan Chase in the US to 2 accounts at the Singapore branch of Swiss private bank Falcon Bank. Funds went back and forth between these accounts, adding layer upon layer of complication, gradually obscuring the origin. Eventually, $681 million were transferred from Tanor into a Malaysian bank account held by Najib Razak, a sum he insists was a political donation from the Saudi royal family. 5 months later, most of it was returned. The money bounced around accounts at Falcon and DBS Bank in Singapore before a sum of $27.3 million was, according to the DOJ, wired to jeweler Lorraine Schwartz to buy the necklace. The complexity of these cross-border flows has made getting to the bottom of the 1MDB fraud painstaking and difficult. But with Malaysia's government keen to burnish its graft-fighting credentials and claw back the money stolen, the investigation shows no signs of slowing down.
He knew he was in big trouble. I think he borrowed more than most other prudent real estate people. He had extended himself to the Trump shuttle, to a yacht, to a helicopter, and to a lot of things which weren't generating any cash flow, and he had to support his lifestyle. So he was in trouble.
Does anybody else want to bet $190,000 we're going to sell it?
When the economy and the real estate market plummeted in 1990, attorney Alan Pomerantz says Trump owed $4 billion to his debtors, including that $1 billion for which he was personally responsible.
Because he personally guaranteed so much debt, the leverage shifted dramatically over to the banks, because it was no longer an issue of a bank and a piece of real estate. It was a bank in Donald Trump's actual survival.
Trump owed money all over town to 72 banks in all. Pomerantz represented them as a group. How close was he to going personally bankrupt?
Very.
Trump makes a point of saying he never went personally bankrupt, but there's a reason why the banks decided to keep Trump whole.
We made the decision that he would be worth more alive to us than dead. Dead meaning in bankruptcy. We don't want him to be in bankruptcy. We want him out in the world selling these assets for us.
So you wanted him alive because he was a salesman and could best sell his own properties.
That's correct. We kept him alive to help us.
Chase, they just announced earnings and they were incredible. Where are you? They were very substantial. Will you say thank you, Mr. President, at least? Huh? I made a lot of bankers look very good, but you're doing a great job.